This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. Today, as I often am, I am joined by Cliff Schecter to talk about the chaos in the Republican Party. Cliff, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure, Jesse. Thank you for extending the invite.
It is a strange time to be in this business, someone who follows closely politics. And I was going to say that it's nice to have someone who has some experience and has been around for years to see what's going on. But really, all of us are in new territory, having never witnessed the chaos that we're witnessing right now, these self-inflicted wounds being put upon themselves in the Republican Party. I mean, I've been around a long time. I think you've been probably around just as long or longer in this business. Have you seen anything like this before?
No, not on this level. You know, there are government shutdowns under Boehner a decade ago. The problem is that, you know, Newt Gingrich is the original sin.
Yeah.
And when he took over the House, he took it over by any means necessary, by attracting every crazy into his caucus who was willing to do whatever it took to win. And that meant, in many cases, criminal proceedings that were held against them. And you may remember the name Jack Abramoff. They took all sorts of money from lobbies. The point being is they've gotten away from, they were once a political party that had two wings, and the conservative wing was stronger, but there were some actual moderates and center-right people, and they all seemed, at least on the surface, say they believed in weird stuff like democracy and the Constitution. And, you know, and now we're at a point where they kept empowering the crazy people more and more and not, you know, stopping them. I often point to a moment in 2010, the "I'm not a witch" ad. I don't know if you remember that someone had to do in Delaware.
Delaware Senate race, yeah.
And the reason I point that out is she was running against Mike Castle, who had been a governor in Delaware and had been in the House for numerous terms, was a direct descendant of Ben Franklin. And was a guy who had, you know, co-sponsored a stem cell research bill, was for an assault weapons ban, like the real moderate Republican. And when they chose that over that, it just seemed to, you know, get worse and worse. So no, none of us have seen it at this level because we feel like we're at the end stages of the Republican Party as a political party in a democracy. I mean, it doesn't resemble a political party in a democracy anymore. It's an autocratic, you know, threat-based mob is what it is.
Yeah, it's that you just really teed me right up there for the segue into what I want to talk about today, and that is, yesterday I talked about the death threats that are being leveled against members of Congress who are not going the way of Jim Jordan, but a lot of people questioned it, like, well, these are just claims. Well, yesterday on Jake Tapper's show, he played, it's too edited for my taste. I think that they should just play it to give everybody the impact of exactly what's being said here. But I'm going to play this clip for the audience, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. And what exactly are the implications for a party that is willing to destroy itself and in the process try to destroy the country? Watch this from Jake Tapper.
This party infighting has taken a dramatic and ugly turn. Several of those lawmakers who opposed Jim Jordan's bid for Speaker are now receiving credible and terrifying death threats. Over the weekend, it was made clear that supporters of Jordan's were going to launch a pressure campaign that apparently had Jordan's blessing until last night. And in the intervening time, well, it got pretty ugly. And we have some exclusive audio right now of a threatening message that was left as a voicemail for the wife of one of the Republican lawmakers who opposes Jordan. This has only been edited to take out identifying information of the wife and the lawmaker. We've bleeped out some of the language, but not all of it. And I want to warn you, this is pretty ugly stuff. Take a listen.
Why is your husband such a pig? Why would he get on TV and make an asshole of himself? Because he's a deep state prick? Because he doesn't represent the people? So what we're going to do is we're going to come follow you all over the place. We're going to be up your ass nonstop. We are now Antifa. We're going to do what the left does because your of a husband gets on TV. Just, oh, the bad guys, they did so. I'm going to vote for Kevin McCarthy, a piece of shit who everybody knows. And for his piece of shit ass to talk about Americans who are actually fighting for Americans as the bad people says everything about him. So you, your husband, and we're not like the left. We aren't violent, but we're gonna follow your ass, every appointment you have, everything you do. Your husband's an asshole. You should talk to his stupid ass. We're at war. Israelis being killed, and your dumb husband is acting like a 2-year-old. No wonder. He's a warmonger piece of shit. So listen, you're going to keep getting calls and emails. I'm putting all your information over the internet now. Everybody else is, and you will not be left alone because your husband, Jim Jordan, or more conservative, or you're going to be molested like you can't ever imagine. And again, non-violently. You won't go to the beauty parlor. Now, you must be a bitch to marry an ugly mother like that.
With me now to discuss Republican Congressman Mike McCall from Texas. He's the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Mr. Chairman, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
That is disgusting. The pressure campaign for Jordan was announced over the weekend. Calls like that started happening immediately. Jordan didn't denounce it until last night. What is going on in your party?
What is going on in the Republican Party? Indeed, that is disgusting. Also, this, in my estimation, has been initiated by Jim Jordan. Certainly, There is a tacit approval or endorsement of this behavior. And I believe that is why in subsequent votes now, he's getting fewer and fewer votes to become Speaker of the House. What's your take on this?
Well, as somebody who obviously is of the left, so I'm violent, unlike him, I enjoyed that. We're going to molest you non-violently.
Yeah.
The left, they're all, first of all, I read that message, I looked at that message, and if you study this stuff close enough, it's like a Da Vinci Code for all of their propaganda.
Yeah. Deep
right?
state,
Warmonger,
all the words.
Right. Warmonger because you support Ukraine against Russia, like all the stuff, the garbage, the bile that they feed their voters who turn them into these kinds of zombies on Fox and talk radio and Newsmax and the rest. But second of all, again, yeah, there's no doubt. In my mind, can I prove that Jim Jordan's behind this? No. But this is the Republican Party. Again, people just don't, have you seen some of the campaigns they've run? You live in a state where there are competitive campaigns and you've seen the things they've done. We can go with the DNA of this stuff. You can go back to Lee Atwater and, famed, right-wing from the South who would use the N-word like it was a bodily function and,
right.
Use that to try to turn working class whites against the Democratic Party. You could go back to the 2008 campaign with, with George W. Bush pretending he didn't know what was going on with John McCain when they were saying his adopted Sri Lankan kid was a black love child in the South Carolina primary.
Yeah.
They all thought they could just do, that you could fly close to the sun, but it wouldn't get you. The fire wouldn't burn you. They kept doing it in campaigns, but now we can just govern normally. And what happened was when you keep telling people propaganda and you keep lying to them and you keep inciting them, A, you turn your base into a group of crazy people. And B, guess what? Some of those crazy people that were your base, Marjorie Taylor Greene was once an internet poster on this crap, end up running and winning.
Yeah.
And so they have become that. They thought they could control it. They could not control it. They unleashed this beast, and now it's everywhere. Again, I'll say quickly, I said in a tweet, I already mentioned some of it, but the definition of terrorism is achieving political means through violence.
That's right.
And the threat of violence. How is this not that? They're not a political party in a democracy.
Yeah.
They're a terrorism group or a terror group or a mob or they're a drug cartel. It's like out of Ozark or something.
Yeah, you were right when you said terrorism. The problem, as I see it, is that now that we have definitive proof of the threats, of the violence, that we're going to molest you non-violently, but we're going to molest you.
Right.
This is not being called out by the members of the Republican Party who are on the giving side of these threats. I got a clip here from Scott Perry, who is an insurrectionist at the very least, he's an insurrectionist apologist.
Well, his phone was confiscated by the FBI, so that should tell you a lot.
Exactly. So Scott Perry is being asked about these threats to not just members, but to the families of members. Someone got a hold of a congressman's wife's number and used it. I don't have the families of congressmen, their numbers, so I don't know how they got it. It has to be an inside job as far as I'm concerned. But listen to Scott Perry, not only not condemning this, but comparing that voicemail and voicemails like it to an email from a lobbyist. Watch this.
All of us in Congress receive death threats. I don't know if that's a news flash for anybody here. There are people out in the world that dislike us and threaten us. That's nothing new. It's nothing new to any member of Congress. We all know that is another red herring. And let me just say this. They didn't seem to mind. No one in this town seemed to mind the pressure campaign from all the lobbyists and special interests in Washington, D.C. in January. But suddenly, now they mind all the calls and the emails and the texts and the letters and the visits from their own constituents.
Are death threats the same as lobbyist emails?
No, they should be taken seriously. Jim Jordan has nothing to do with that. That's the point.
Scott Perry is a violent apologist piece of garbage. Yes. Even members of his own party, even members of his own caucus, his colleagues, their families are being harassed and threatened, and he compares it to an email from a lobbyist or a special interest group.
Yeah. I mean, we just have these garbage people, these sociopaths that have no care for anything but power. Scott Perry among them. I mean, I wonder why they're all so attracted to Jim Jordan and Donald Trump, right? You know, it's they see themselves. You know, Scott Perry's one, and it gets me angry, and I'm not a lawyer. I will freely admit that. But, you know, there have been enough articles out there on Merrick Garland weighing whether he could do certain things politically. And maybe he was like, well, we got to go after the big cheese in Trump. But if we go after numerous Republican elected officials, the problem here is that there's a half dozen, it's not even a half dozen, there's a dozen and a half or more Republican members of the House that were meeting with Jim Jordan was on one of 10 on the calls with Trump to try to, you know, talk about how they could pressure Mike Pence into rejecting the electoral votes, that planned this all out with him, and Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz. Remember the image of those guys on January 6th saying, oh, Ted Cruz is with us, as they were looking through.
That's right.
And if you don't prosecute these people, they're still there to do things like run for speaker and leadership and president. And I mean, as we said, you know, Scott Perry had his phone confiscated. He is clearly a seditionist. He's clearly an apologist for the, you know, these guys that broke in, that had shirts like Camp Auschwitz on, that murdered officers and gouged and stabbed and kicked and punched and, you know, trapped and like beat, you know, police officers whose job it was to protect the Capitol.
Yeah, for me, it's extra egregious for Scott Perry because he was an officer in the United States Army, I believe, and definitely on top of his oath to becoming a congressperson, also took an oath when he became an officer in the United States military to support and defend and protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And here he is working in direct contravention of that oath, of that sacred vow he took to our founding governing documents.
I can't imagine how that gets to you as someone who is an honorable member of our, you know, former member of our military, when you see the Scott Perrys and the Nancy Maces and the Lindsey Grahams and the others that took that oath, Dan Crenshaw, and they behave like this. Yeah. They're willing to elect a seditionist and overthrow everything they sort of, I mean, they're again, there's no other way to say it. I think, you know, they're closer to a terrorist organization than they are a political party in a democracy. There's certainly something in between, but they're not the latter anymore.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Well, I would invite the conversation to continue in the comments. You can comment below. You can also call and leave a voicemail, 714-576-4054. You can also email daily@dollemore.com. You can follow me at Dollemore on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook, all of them at Dollemore. Where can they find you, Cliff?
At the Schecter on YouTube, and you can find me at Cliff Schecter on Twitter and Cliff D Schecter on Threads. Those are probably the three best places.
And go and subscribe to his YouTube channel, doing great work in your fledgling. Is that how you would say it? Your brand new, getting out there and getting shit done YouTube channel.
You know, we're just we're bootstrapping it up, my friends. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. How do you think I got here? It's bootstrap. I'm still bootstrapping it, brother.
You are. Well, your bootstraps at this point are probably at least made of a slightly better material than mine. You can probably afford a little more.
Kevlar.
No, I mean seriously. I aspire to have my channel get to the point where it's like your channel. So
well, in due time, you got to take your lumps, and that coming on this show is part of taking your lumps.
It seems fair.
Thanks for joining me today. And everybody out there, be genuine. Take care of one another.